삶에.
They turned me into a thief before I ever got the chance to become anything else. Not the kind of thief who picks pockets or breaks into houses. A different kind. The crueler kind. They stamped that word on my forehead, then went door to door around town and told employers I couldn't be trusted with money. They did it calmly, like they were discussing the weather. And then they sat back and watched me struggle like I was some experiment. My name is Erin Hale. I'm 26. I graduated with a degree in accounting, strong grades, a solid internship, decent interview skills. But for nearly 2 years after college, all I collected were rejection emails, cold, metallic little messages. More than once, everything looked promising. People smiled at me. They shook my hand. They said they'd be in touch soon. Then nothing. Then one short line. We've chosen a candidate who's a better fit. I kept asking myself what I was missing. I cut my hair. I rewrote my resume. I earned another certificate. I practiced the "what's your biggest weakness" question until I was exhausted by the sound of my own voice. I did all the things people tell you to do when life knocks you down. But I couldn't figure out why the ground under my feet kept getting pulled away, piece by piece. Maple Ridge, Ohio isn't a big city. Here, a rumor moves faster than an ambulance, and my father, Clayton Hale, poured concrete for half this town. He shakes hands with restaurant owners, shares tables with the men in the local business council, and carries that look that makes people want to cooperate before he even asks. He calls it reputation. My mother, Patricia, always stands beside him, soft-spoken and silent, like a perfectly pressed tablecloth. And my brother, Logan, is the Hale family's pride. Business degree, smooth talker, the kind of guy who looks like he belongs anywhere he walks into. Me? I'm the extra piece, the daughter people describe as sweet and forget 2 seconds later. The thief label started with something so small it's almost embarrassing. When I was 18, my parents handed me a card and told me to buy textbooks and a used laptop for school. I spent exactly what they told me to spend, about $1,200. I brought everything home, set it on the kitchen table, and felt hopeful, like I dragged my future into the house with my own hands. My father stared at the receipt. His face went dark. Then he said I'd taken money without permission. I blinked at him. He'd given me the card. He told me what to buy. But he didn't need logic. He needed power. He made me pay back every dollar, not because of the money, because he wanted me to remember who decided whether I was allowed to move forward. I worked myself raw, classes during the day, shifts at night. I graduated later than my friends, and I told myself it would be worth it because at least I still had my family. I was naive. After graduation, my father called me into his home office. The room smelled like polished wood and bitter coffee. He didn't waste time. He said he had an opportunity for me. Come work for Hale and Sons Builders, no pay at first, live at home, help with the books, be Logan's assistant. You need to learn gratitude, he said, like he was saving me from starvation. I said no. One word. That was all. But it froze the air in the room. My father lifted his head and looked at me like I just betrayed him. My mother stood in the hallway, clutching a dish towel, silent. And my brother, Logan, gave a small laugh like I just told the world's worst joke. "Who do you think you are?" my father asked. I couldn't answer, not because I didn't know, because I realized for the first time he wasn't asking to hear my answer. He was issuing a warning. A week later, I started sending out applications, and every door began to close before I could even touch the handle. Until one day, at a small firm in town, the HR manager looked at me longer than usual. She started to say something, then swallowed it. Finally, she exhaled, her voice thinning out. "You should talk to your father." I walked out to the parking lot. The sun hammered the asphalt. My hand shook on my keys, and in my head, one question rang out, sharp enough to scare me. What did my father do behind my back? I didn't go straight home that day. I drove circles around Maple Ridge until the sky turned fully dark, like the night could swallow what I just heard. "You should talk to your father." The HR manager hadn't said anything else, but her eyes had said plenty. Something invisible was blocking me, and that invisible thing carried the Hale name. Eventually, I had to go back. Our house sat outside town, a white painted farmhouse with a wide wooden porch, the kind of place that looked warm and wholesome in a brochure. Only I knew how cold it was inside. My father was in his office with the door cracked open, like he'd been waiting. The TV in the living room murmured with the evening news. My mother stood folding towels on the couch, her movements smooth and repetitive, calm in a way that felt terrifying. My brother Logan lounged nearby with his phone, laughing at something on the screen. I stepped into my father's office. The smell of polished wood and old coffee hit me in the face. "Did you call the places I applied to?" I asked. No warm-up, no small talk. My father looked up slowly, like a man deciding whether to grant mercy or deliver punishment. "Yes," he said. One word, clean, final. Not even a flicker of denial. My stomach dropped. "Why?" He set his pen down, leaned back, folded his arms, and wore an expression that was almost patient. "Because you needed a lesson. You think you can walk out of this house without paying a price?" "I'm just trying to get a job." My voice shook, but I forced it steady. "I didn't do anything wrong." My father smiled, not kindly, just a sound that cracked out of his throat. "You stole from us when you were 18. You think anyone should hand their books, their payroll, their accounts to someone like that?" Heat roared in my ears. "You gave me the card. You told me to buy textbooks." "You used the money," he snapped, cutting me off. "Our money. And then you defied us afterward." I turned to my mother. I needed one sentence, just one. Something that said she could see how wrong this was. My mother looked at me. Her eyes wavered for a second, like water caught by wind. Then she looked down and folded the towel again, pulling the corners perfectly straight. Not a word. That silence hurt more than my father's laugh ever could. Logan pushed off the wall and leaned into the doorway, his voice syrupy. "You should be grateful, Erin. Dad's still offering you a spot at the family company. Most people get exposed as a thief, and they don't get any options." I stared at him. This brother who'd borrowed money from me in college and forgot to pay it back, who'd used my card to order food when he ran out of cash. But in the Hale family story, only one person was allowed to be wrong, and it was never me. I left the office on legs that barely worked. Outside, the Maple Ridge air was sharp and cold. I sat in my car and cried once, fast and silent, like someone had a hand around my throat. The next morning, I applied anywhere that still had an opening. I couldn't afford pride anymore. Cedar Ridge Inn hired me as a housekeeper. The manager, June Larkin, looked me up and down and said, "I don't care who you are out there. And here, you show up on time, you clean properly. That's it." I nodded like she'd tossed me a lifeline. The first few days, I scrubbed floors until my back burned, changed sheets until my hands went numb, pushed the heavy cart like I was dragging my whole life behind me. But at least I could breathe here. No one asked who my father was. No one looked at me like a stain. Until Friday night. The hotel restaurant was packed. I was rolling fresh towels toward the supply room when I heard a familiar laugh. Loud and confident, the kind of laugh that always sounded like it owned the room. I froze. My heart kicked hard, like my body recognized danger before my brain did. I peeked through the door crack. My parents, Logan, and a couple of men I'd seen at local business dinners. They sat near the window in suits, red wine in their glasses, laughter clinking like crystal. My father saw me. He lifted his glass like he was toasting a joke he'd won. "Well, well," he said, just loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "There's my independent daughter, Erin. Looks like she finally found a job that fits." A few heads turned. A few eyes slid over my uniform. My face went hot. Logan smirked. "Make sure you clean the rooms really well, sis, and don't accidentally take anything that belongs to the guests." A scatter of laughter followed, small, but sharp enough to cut skin. I went stiff. 1 second. 2. Then I pushed my cart forward, my spine straight as a post driven into the ground. I didn't give them my tears. But when I turned into the staff supply room behind the kitchen, my legs went soft. I leaned against a shelf and pulled in a breath so deep it hurt. And that was when I heard my father's voice through the thin wall, smooth, confident, the tone he used when he was closing a deal. "Good. I'll arrange for my daughter to meet your son. A simple marriage, a strategic alliance. We lock down that pipeline project and we're done." I went completely still. The air in the supply room seemed to vanish. My ears rang. My heart hit so hard I thought I might fall. He wasn't just destroying my career. He was selling my future. I slid down onto the cold floor, surrounded by bleach and paper towels. My hands clenched until my knuckles turned white. And inside my head, a decision sparked, hot and immediate. If I don't run now, I'll never be myself again. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay on my narrow motel bed, cheap, scratchy sheets, the hum of an old air conditioner rattling like loose teeth, and stared at the ceiling until it felt like the dark was pressing down on my eyes. My father's voice kept replaying in my head. A simple marriage, a strategic alliance, like I was a signature on a contract. By sunrise, my fear had burned into something sharper, a plan. Not a perfect plan, not a brave one, just the only thing I had left. Disappear long enough to get my footing, then build a life my father couldn't reach. I started with the basics. I moved my small savings into a new account he couldn't see. I changed passwords. I turned off location sharing. I stopped posting anything online. No check-ins, no new beginnings, no hopeful quotes that would make it easy for someone to track my mood. I told June I needed extra hours. I took every shift she offered. I worked until my shoulders ached and my hands cracked from chemicals. And still, every time my phone buzzed, my stomach knotted. 2 days after the restaurant incident, Kara Wills showed up outside Cedar Ridge Inn. I recognized her from high school, same sharp eyes, same purposeful walk. But now she carried herself like someone who made a living asking questions people didn't want to answer. She waited by the employee entrance, leaning against her car like she wasn't waiting at all. "Erin," she said when I stepped out on break, "can we talk? Just a minute." My first instinct was to shut down. Everyone in Maple Ridge had an angle. Everyone wanted something. But her voice wasn't gossipy. It was careful. She continued, "I saw what happened in the restaurant, and I've been hearing the same story about you for years. I don't believe it." I swallowed, throat tight. People believe what my father tells them. That's because he's loud, not because he's right. I didn't answer. I didn't trust my voice. She lowered her tone. I'm working on something. Local contracts, the business council, the way certain people control the town. Your dad's name keeps showing up. A chill ran down my spine. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't think you're safe, she said simply, and because I don't like watching someone get buried alive by a rumor. I held her gaze. What do you want? Kara lifted one hand. Nothing from you, not yet. I just want you to know if you need someone to witness what's happening, I can be that person. And if you're trying to get out, don't let them write your story for you. Then she handed me a small card with a number on it and walked away like she hadn't just cracked open the only window of air I'd had in weeks. That night, I went through my things like my life depended on it, because it did. I emptied my backpack. I pulled out an old shoebox from under the motel bed where I'd been stuffing paperwork, my diploma copy, tax forms, resumes printed on cheap paper. I found nothing useful, just reminders of how hard I'd tried. Then my fingers hit a dead weight at the bottom of the box, an old phone. I stared at it for a long moment. It was the one I'd used in college. I'd kept it because I couldn't afford to throw anything away. I'd forgotten it existed the moment I got a new number after graduation. My hands shook as I plugged it into the wall. The screen blinked, struggled, then lit up like a tired eye opening. It took a minute for it to boot. When it finally did, I saw the missed notifications stacked like unopened letters. Most were junk. Some were from classmates I'd lost touch with. And then I saw it. A voicemail notification, dated 3 years ago, a week after my grandmother Vivian Brooks' funeral. My pulse hammered. My thumb hovered, then pressed play. Erin, a man's voice said, calm, professional. This is Daniel R. Mercer, counsel for Vivian Brooks. I've been trying to reach you regarding matters of her estate and instructions left specifically for you. Please call my office as soon as possible. This is time sensitive. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I replayed it. Once, twice. Like hearing it again would make it less real. Grandma Vivian had left something for me. And someone had made sure I never heard about it. I didn't even hesitate. I called the number listed in the voicemail. It rang, clicked, then went to an automated message. This line is no longer in service. My throat tightened again, but I wasn't going to let a dead phone number stop me. I opened my laptop and searched his name, the firm, anything. Most results were old. A few had been scrubbed clean, but I found a recent listing. Mercer and Lane, attorneys at law, Columbus. I called. A receptionist answered. Bright voice, polished. I'm trying to reach Daniel Mercer, I said, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears, like someone pretending to be steady. There was a pause. May I ask who's calling? My name is Erin Hale. Vivian Brooks was my grandmother. I just found a voicemail. Silence again. Different this time. Heavier. Miss Hale, the receptionist said carefully. One moment. Music played. Soft piano. The kind people put behind bad news to make it easier to swallow. Then another voice came on the line. Older, warmer, but tight around the edges. Erin, thank God. We tried to reach you. We were told you weren't interested. My grip tightened until my fingers hurt. Told by who? A beat. Your father, the woman said, like she already regretted saying it out loud. Mr. Clayton Hale contacted us. He said you wanted nothing to do with your grandmother's estate. He requested that all communication go through him. My vision blurred, not with tears, but with rage so clean it almost felt like clarity. He didn't just block my career, he'd blocked my grandmother's final words. I want to come in, I said, each word deliberate. I want everything she left. I want every document." Another pause, then, "Okay, yes, we can do that. But Erin, there's more. There are instructions, and there's a reason Mr. Mercer insisted we keep certain items sealed unless you appeared in person." My heartbeat stumbled. "What kind of items?" "I can't say over the phone," she replied. "But I can tell you this. Your grandmother anticipated interference." My mouth went dry. "What do I do?" I asked. "You come to Columbus," she said, "as soon as possible." I stared at the motel wall. The air felt thinner, like my life had been a locked room and someone had slid a key under the door. But before I could answer, my current phone buzzed on the bed beside me. Unknown number. I stared at it, dread crawling up my spine. Then it buzzed again, this time a text message. "You're making a mistake." No signature, no name, but I knew who it was. My father had eyes everywhere, and somewhere deep inside me, a cold thought settled into place. If Grandma Vivian anticipated interference, she must have also prepared a way around it. I swallowed hard, lifted the phone to my ear, and made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. "I'll be there tomorrow," I said into the line. And as I said it, my phone rang again, this time a direct call from that same unknown number, like the town itself was trying to yank me back before I could escape. The bus ride to Columbus felt longer than it should have. Not because of miles, because every exit sign looked like a choice, and I'd spent my entire life being told I didn't get to choose. I kept my hood up and my eyes down. I didn't post, I didn't text anyone back, I didn't even let myself daydream the way normal people do when they travel, about new streets, new coffee shops, new faces that didn't know your last name. All I could think about was that message on my phone. "You're making a mistake." My father never sounded scared. That's how I knew he was. Mercer and Lane sat on the 6th floor of a glass building downtown. The lobby smelled like lemon polish and money. My shoes squeaked on the marble as if the building itself could tell I didn't belong. A woman in her 50s met me at the reception desk, her posture straight, her expression cautious. She introduced herself as Linda Lane, Daniel Mercer's partner. Her handshake was warm, but her eyes were sharp. "Erin," she said quietly, guiding me toward a conference room with frosted glass walls. "Before we begin, I need to confirm something. Are you here voluntarily?" I blinked. "Yes." "Is anyone forcing you to sign anything today?" "No." She nodded once, like she'd been holding her breath and could finally let it out. "Good. Then we can proceed." She placed a file folder on the table, thick, heavy, years of paper and intention. "Your grandmother, Vivian Brooks, established a trust. Not a simple one, a protective one. She anticipated that certain family members might attempt to control information, restrict access, or pressure you." My throat tightened. "My father?" Linda didn't argue. She simply slid a page toward me. It was a copy of an email, dated 3 years ago, sent from my father's address. Polite, authoritative, unmistakably him. It stated that I was emotionally unstable, not interested, and that any matters regarding Vivian's estate should be handled through him to avoid unnecessary drama. I stared at the words until they blurred. He had taken my grief and weaponized it. He had taken my silence and rewritten it into consent. "I never said that," I whispered. "I know," Linda replied, soft but firm, "because Vivian anticipated that too." She opened a small safe box she'd carried in and pulled out an envelope sealed with dark red wax. My grandmother's handwriting curved across the front, like she was still alive and still in control. "To Erin, only Erin, open in the presence of counsel." My fingers hovered over it. For a second, I was 18 again, standing in my kitchen with textbooks and a used laptop, waiting for permission to exist. Linda slid the envelope closer. "Whenever you're ready." I broke the seal. Inside was a letter. My grandmother's voice leapt off the page, steady and blunt in the way she'd always been. She didn't waste ink on softness. She wrote like a woman who understood storms and built roofs anyway. "Erin, if you are reading this, it means you finally walked into a room they tried to keep you out of." My chest tightened so hard it hurt. I read faster, desperate. She wrote about watching my father's need to control everything, about my mother's silence, about Logan learning that cruelty could be rewarded. She wrote about me, how I took blame too quickly, how I apologized for air, how I kept trying to earn love that came with conditions. Then the letter shifted. Vivian explained the real reason she had kept her wealth quiet. She had sold her business years ago, invested early, and built something steady. Not flashy, not vulnerable. And she had done one final thing my father never expected. She had placed a portion of her holdings into a private company as a founding stake, held through a trust, with instructions that could not be altered by anyone but me. Linda placed another document on the table. Northbridge Capital, 8%. My vision tilted. The room seemed to shrink and expand at the same time, like my body didn't know how to contain what my mind was trying to understand. "That can't be right," I said, the words coming out hoarse. "I've never even met anyone at Northbridge." "You weren't supposed to," Linda said. She worked with Miles Northbridge personally. He agreed to this structure on one condition, that the stake remained sealed and inactive until you chose to stand on your own feet. My fingers trembled over the paper. 8% wasn't a gift, it was a foundation, a door that didn't need my father's permission to open. Linda continued, "There's more. Vivian included a supplemental record, notes, dates, names, communications. She documented behavior she believed could become coercive or harmful. It's extensive." A small, bitter laugh escaped me. She knew. She knew, Linda confirmed, and she prepared. My phone buzzed again, as if on cue. Another unknown number, another message. "Turn around." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. For the first time, his threats felt smaller than what I was holding in my hands. Linda leaned forward. "Erin, Northbridge is hosting a fundraising gala in Columbus next week. Your father attends those events. He networks there. He wins contracts there." My stomach tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Miles Northbridge asked me to," she said. "He wants you to meet me, and he wants you present at that gala. Not as someone's daughter, not as someone's employee, as yourself." As if hearing the name triggered something in the world, Linda's phone lit up on the table. She glanced at the screen, then looked back at me. "It's him," she said. She answered on speaker. A man's voice came through, calm and controlled, the kind of voice that didn't raise volume because it never needed to. "Erin Hale?" he asked. "Yes," I managed. "This is Miles Northbridge. I've been waiting a long time to say this to you. Your grandmother didn't just believe in you, she planned for you. If you're willing, I'd like you in my office tomorrow morning, and next week, I'd like you at the gala." My pulse pounded in my throat. Part of me wanted to run. Part of me wanted to hide in the motel and pretend I'd never come. But then I remembered the restaurant, the laughter, the way my father lifted his glass like he owned my humiliation. I swallowed hard. "I'll be there," I said. A quiet pause. "Good," Miles replied. "One more thing. Your father called us this morning. He told my HR director you were a thief." My blood went cold. Miles continued, voice unchanged. "I told them to put it in writing, every word, every claim, because next week, in a room full of witnesses, I intend to ask him to repeat it." The line went dead. Linda looked at me, her expression steady. You understand what this means, right? I stared down at the document in front of me. 8%, a sealed promise, a trap my grandmother set years ago, not with malice, but with precision. For the first time in 2 years, the question in my head wasn't, what did he do behind my back? It was, what happens when he can't hide anymore? And somewhere deep in my chest, something that had been broken for a long time shifted into place. Next week, I wouldn't be wearing a uniform. Next week, I would walk into that room while he was still laughing, and I would let the truth step into the light. The Grand Ashford glowed like a jewel against the Columbus night. Glass doors, soft music, valet lines, and people dressed like consequences didn't apply to them. A week ago, I would have been invisible here, a background figure, someone carrying trays, wiping fingerprints off mirrors, apologizing for taking up space. Tonight, I walked in through the front entrance, not as Clayton Hale's daughter, as Erin Hale, analyst at Northbridge Capital and a founding shareholder whose name was already etched into documents my father couldn't edit. I could feel it in the room before I saw him, the gravity of him, the way men like my father don't just enter spaces, they claim them. Clayton stood near the bar in a tailored suit, laughing too loudly, hand on someone's shoulder like he owned their future. My mother was beside him in a pale dress, smiling the way she always did. Pretty, practiced, empty. Logan hovered close, proud and polished, scanning the room for people worth impressing. And then my father's eyes landed on me. For a fraction of a second, the mask slipped. It wasn't shock, it was calculation. Then he recovered and smiled like this was just another scene he could control. Miles Northbridge met me near the edge of the ballroom. He didn't touch my arm. He didn't guide me like I needed escorting. He stood beside me like an equal, quiet and solid as a wall. "You ready?" he asked. No, I wasn't, but ready had never been something life offered me. "I'm here," I said, and my voice didn't break. The program moved forward, speeches, applause, the kind of polished charity language people use to feel generous without changing anything. I watched my father working the room, leaning in to shake hands, flashing his smile, collecting favors like coins. Then the MC's voice cut through the music. "And now, Northbridge Capital would like to recognize a member of our founding circle, someone whose story reminds us why legacy matters." The room shifted. Heads turned. My father's grin widened, like he assumed the recognition was meant for him. Miles Northbridge stepped onto the stage. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Thank you," he said. "Tonight we honor the late Vivian Brooks, whose vision helped build what Northbridge is today. Vivian believed in planning, in protection, and in truth. She left behind more than money. She left behind instructions." He paused, and the room held its breath without realizing it. "Please welcome Erin Hale." A hush snapped across the ballroom. I saw my father's face change the way weather changes, sudden and violent. Logan's champagne glass tilted in his hand. My mother went still, like her body forgot how to perform. I walked forward. Every step felt like walking through old laughter, old rejection emails, old nights in my car with my face wet and my hands shaking on the steering wheel. But I kept moving anyway. Miles continued, "Erin joins Northbridge as an analyst. More importantly, she is a founding shareholder holding 8% of Northbridge Capital through the Vivian Brooks Trust." It wasn't a roar that followed. It was something better. Silence. The kind of silence that happens when people realize they've been lied to by someone they trusted. Then my father surged forward like a man who couldn't survive without control. "That's ridiculous," he barked. "She's a thief. She stole from us. She can't be trusted." Miles lifted a hand, calm as ever. "Mr. Hale," he said, "thank you for repeating that. I asked you to." My father froze. "What?" Miles gestured to a man near the stage, Northbridge's counsel, and beside him stood Linda Lane from Mercer and Lane, holding a thin folder like a weapon made of paper. Miles spoke evenly. "Last week, you called our HR director. You stated in writing that Erin Hale is a thief and should never be employed in any position involving finances. You also contacted multiple employers in Maple Ridge with the same claim." My father's mouth opened and closed once, like a fish realizing the water was gone. "And," Miles added, "we have documentation that you intercepted communication regarding Vivian Brooks' estate. You informed counsel that Erin was not interested. That was untrue." A murmur rose, spreading like fire through dry grass. My mother stepped forward, voice trembling. "Clayton." He whipped around. "Stay out of this." There it was, sharp and public, the real man. Not the generous businessman, not the family patriarch, just a control addict with an audience. Logan tried to laugh it off. "Come on, this is a misunderstanding." I looked at my brother, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt clear. "It's not a misunderstanding," I said, and my voice carried. "It was a strategy." My father turned back to me, eyes bright with rage. "I did it to teach you respect. You think you can embarrass me in front of these people?" And that was the moment he destroyed himself. Because he didn't deny it, he admitted it. He said it out loud in a room full of witnesses. Miles didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply nodded once, like a judge hearing a confession. "Thank you," he said quietly. "That's all we needed." Security didn't drag my father out. That would have made him a victim. Instead, the room did something far colder. People stepped back, hands unclasped from shoulders. A man Clayton had been laughing with moments ago looked away like he'd never met him. Another woman turned, whispering to her husband. Someone else set their drink down as if it suddenly tasted wrong. My father stood there alone in the middle of the ballroom, finally seeing what he'd done, only it was too late to shove it back into silence. Later, my mother called me from the hotel hallway. Her mascara had smudged. Her hands shook. "I didn't know what to do. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I believed she was sorry, but sorry wasn't the same thing as safe. "I forgive you," I said, because carrying hatred felt like hauling my father's weight on my back. "But I'm not coming home." Her face crumpled. "Erin." "No," I said gently. "This is the first decision I've made that's mine." Logan texted after midnight, a single line. I didn't think Dad would go that far. I stared at it for a long time, then typed back, "You watched him do it for years." I didn't add anything else. 2 weeks later, I signed my lease on a small apartment in Columbus. Nothing fancy. Clean walls, sunlight in the kitchen. Quiet that didn't feel like punishment. On my first morning there, I bought flowers, yellow ones like my grandmother used to keep by her window. I set them in a glass on the counter and just stood there, breathing, letting the moment land. Then I drove to the cemetery. I knelt by Vivian Brooks' headstone and pressed my palm to the cold granite. I whispered, "You were right. They tried to bury me." A breeze moved through the trees, soft as a hand on my shoulder. "And you still left me a way out." I stood, wiping my eyes, not ashamed of them. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, one message. "We're not finished." My stomach tightened, but only for a second, because now I knew something my father still didn't understand. I wasn't trapped in his story anymore. I was writing my own. And if you're watching Still Waters Payback, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because sometimes the quietest people carry the strongest storms.